What I've learned in my 15 years in the timeshare cancellation business is you don't need to be an attorney to get folks out of their timeshare. At Wesley, we've helped over 40,000 families cancel their timeshare, and I want to share with you how we do it. Just give my office a call. I guarantee if we take you as a client, we'll get you out of your timeshare or you'll pay nothing. Attorneys, this was meant to be funny, so please don't sue me, especially my friend Kenneth from Black River Falls, Wisconsin.
Call now for your free timeshare exit info kit. 800-613-5454. 800-613-5454. 800-613-5454.
Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent says the Senate is on track to vote Friday on the GOP mega bill, and the president would be fully involved in helping to gather support for the bill in the final days. Bernie Bennett reports.
Bessent spoke to reporters after meeting with GOP senators in the Capitol as Republican leaders raced to reach consensus on key provisions. He predicted that Senate and House Republicans would reach a deal on raising the cap on state and local tax deductions, a major sticking point, in the next 24 to 48 hours. Bessent predicted the legislation would also pass the House quickly and make it to Mr. Trump's desk by the 4th of July deadline the president set for the bill.
A bipartisan group of lawmakers vowing to keep Chinese artificial intelligence systems out of federal agencies while pledging to ensure that the United States will prevail against China in the global AI competition. Breaking news and analysis, townhall.com. A massive cargo ship has sunk off of Alaska's Aleutian Islands. Here's correspondent Ben Thomas.
The Morning Midas cargo ship caught fire earlier this month. It had been carrying some 3,000 new cars to a port in Mexico. All 22 crew members abandoned ship and were rescued by a nearby vessel. Now the Coast Guard reports the ship has sunk. Damage from the fire, bad weather, and water seepage the causes. The Coast Guard says there's no visible pollution right now, but both they and the ship's management company have vessels on site in case that changes. It's unclear if any of the cars were taken off the Morning Midas before it sank. I'm Ben Thomas.
In New York, Zohran Mamdani has declared victory in New York City's Democratic mayoral primary, that after Andrew Cuomo conceded the race in an upset. More on these stories at townhall.com.
Number one for live and local
conservative talk.
I'm very angry.
I've heard a lot of people talking about gun control. You have to wave a magic wand and get rid of the establishment. This maniac is going to inspire the next maniac.
News, analysis, opinion.
But my focus is kind of the mental health crisis. Swamp's not going to drain itself. I'm just sick of the protesting in general, and that's why it's so very important to be prepared.
101.9 and 94.1.
St. Louis is number one for conservative talk.
News Talk STL. This hour of News Talk STL brought to you by Chris Cooper and Serenity Wealth Management. Discover little-known strategies that could be the difference between choosing the care you deserve or having someone else decide it for you. Get a free copy of Chris's book at serenityltc.com. It's a pretty simple concept.
It is clear to me.
Let me make this clear.
Big events.
Your news and your opinions.
We're going to get out there and be heard.
St. Louis's place to talk.
Our voices are never heard in the media. We, the people, will always find a way.
And it's about time that we start putting up or shutting up.
Yeah, and you should come. You should listen to many voices.
101.9 and 94.1.
Their phone lines have surely been burning up.
News Talk STL. From the Michaels Flooring Outlet Weather Center.
I'm First Alert meteorologist Kristen Cornett with your forecast. A heat advisory continues in effect across the area through Thursday evening. For today, mostly sunny, hot, and humid with a high of 96 and a 20% chance for some isolated afternoon showers and thunderstorms. Those dry out this evening. Will be partly cloudy overnight as we drop to 78. And then for Thursday, sunny skies with a high of 96 and only a 10% chance for a few isolated showers and thunderstorms. That's your First Alert forecast. I'm meteorologist Kristen Cornett.
Agree.
I think conservatives have it wrong.
Or disagree.
I couldn't agree with you more.
The conversation happens here.
I agree with you on Trump. I'm shaking my head. I'm one of your liberal Democratic listeners, and I don't get why any of this even matters.
Because your voice matters.
Everybody told him he couldn't do it, and then he did do it.
That's what you got to do. You got to play hardball.
I want to hear what people think and be able to talk about it.
101.9 and 94.1 News Talk STL. This hour of Colombo and Company brought to you by Gutter Pros. Water goes where we tell it. Call 314-656-7195 or visit them at gutterpros.com.
This whole thing's got me thinking about how privileged I've been. America's a wonderful country. If I were a black man, I'd be furious. We're getting frustrated.
Number one for live and local
Conservative talk.
There's certain issues that we need improvement. They would rather have this country on its knees than be successful.
news, analysis, opinion.
We have common sense, and the Democrats have none.
1019 and 94.1.
And I appreciate the discussion.
St. Louis is number one for conservative talk.
News Talk STL.
Hello and welcome to Wednesday afternoon on Colombo and Company on 1019 and 94.1 News Talk STL. Another hot afternoon out there, another busy day in the news cycle. We're going to get you up to speed on everything nationally and locally. As we go through the afternoon, we will catch you up on everything happening in the Middle East and with Donald Trump and the NATO summit and the most recent news coming out of the ceasefire with Iran and Israel. We are also going to talk about this crazy mayoral election in New York that went down yesterday that I am just I am baffled by the results. And man, it's bad for people, good for business, because geez, is there a lot to talk about with what's going on up in New York. For all of our friends, family, and listeners in Illinois, JB Pritzker is in the news again today, so we'll fill you in on that. Also, we'll have a little fun in the 3 o'clock hour, as we do every Wednesday afternoon. We'll lighten things up and have some fun when we open up Close's Cabinet. Talk to our buddy Mark Close from KC95 News Talk STL contributor Danny Define will be with us a little bit later on this hour. And here to start the show with us, you start with the headlines, you start with the heavy hitters, you start with your best.
I love that the intro started with REM, so we got to get Turnpike Troubadours on there to kick it up a little bit. But I started laughing when we talk about all the dysfunction in this country. I don't know if I should laugh or cry.
Yeah, no kidding. Sheriff Dave Marshak from Jefferson County is on the line with us. Always appreciate your time, Sheriff. And, you know, speaking of the crazy news cycle and how don't know to laugh or cry or how to keep up with everything, when I originally wanted to have this most recent conversation and was reaching out to you last week to book this interview, my primary idea for the conversation was regarding a more national discussion about the state of law enforcement because of some of the protests that we've seen around the country, specifically targeted at law enforcement agencies like ICE and things like that. And I just wanted to have a more national conversation, but then over the last several days, a massive local law enforcement story has developed. So, obviously I want to get your thoughts on that as well. We've talked about the situation with the St. Louis Sheriff Montgomery in recent days, and some of the accusations that face him. And then yesterday afternoon, yesterday afternoon, AG Bailey was on with the Tim Jones and Chris Arp show, sort of announcing this now official call from the AG's office for Sheriff Montgomery to step down. we can get into some of the details of those accusations and things. But first, I just want to get your thoughts on that situation.
So the removal of an elected sheriff is a serious matter. And I will tell you that the Missouri Sheriff's Association takes these matters seriously. One perspective is that the voters chose him. And despite the dysfunction in St. Louis City, and we all know about the dysfunction in St. Louis City, that there's an argument that voters chose him. And we saw that with Kim Gardner. There's a segment of the population that says, let them deal with their bad decisions. Elections have consequences. And I certainly understand that from the past. But what we've learned through that process is that there was much more to be concerned about. And, look, I've spoken with Sheriff Montgomery before. He's a fellow sheriff, and us choosing, some of the decisions that we did is always tough. But I will think ultimately the courts will have a determination based on the evidence that the Attorney General presents. Alternatively, the Attorney General has demonstrated a winning track record, and our members of the Missouri Sheriff's Association were encouraged to let's hold off, let's trust the process, look at all the evidence. There's a lot going on with this case, and certainly the sheriff has been in the news for numerous investigations and ongoing litigation. So for us, fellow sheriffs, we kind of took the position that Andrew Bailey probably has a lot more information than, and of course, I think some of that has been released today. So there's been new allegations that I wasn't even familiar with. But we'll trust the process, and we have confidence that the Missouri Attorney General, Andrew Bailey, is doing the right thing for the right reasons, and has sheriff support.
Yeah, there's a lot of public information available, and as you said, there's also a lot more that Andrew Bailey and some other officials know and will be, if not are currently releasing as much as they can to the public. I live in St. Charles County, so I'm not personally one of those citizens that would make that vote, or this would be directly impactful to. I strongly agree with your statement of it takes a lot, in my opinion, a whole lot of reason and proof to overturn an election. But as you mentioned, there's been a lot of information that's come out since that election. Is there anything are you aware of any way that the people in St. Louis that possibly voted for the sheriff and maybe now don't have that confidence anymore? There's not an election coming up for that position. Is there any other way that the citizens can have their voices heard in a situation like this?
They can do a recall petition, and there's a number of different ways that they can do that. I haven't read the St. Louis City Charter, what the implications are that. I will tell you that, look, there's been voter remorse before. This isn't the first time this has happened. It's not the first time it's happened in St. Louis City, and it's not the first time it's happened in our country. Look, I will tell you for whatever it's worth, and this is what I explained to our association and our membership of fellow sheriffs across the state, is that while I didn't offer this kind of in-depth knowledge, but the fact is I had conversations with the Missouri Attorney General before when they were dealing with the challenges of Kim Gardner, and they had much more evidence than that was ever made public. I have confidence that the Attorney General's office probably has evidence that you and I are not privy to or knowledge of. And I think that's why the process has to go about itself, because I think that's the fair way to do things. But I do have confidence in Andrew Bailey, and let's face it, he has a winning track record. So we have to have that in the back of our mind as well.
Talking to Sheriff Dave Marshak from Jefferson County. I do want to get into some of that more, just national conversation while we still have a couple minutes. Last thing specifically on this situation with St. Louis Sheriff Montgomery. Does this have any, does when this type of story is so public and in the news, and there's just so many, there's a lot of weird stuff attached to it, like the dice rolling story and the audio attached to that. it creates a lot of negative headlines for local law enforcement. Does that have any impact or influence on other departments in the area like yours?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. One of the first calls I made yesterday, I got a heads up from the Attorney General that this was happening, and we immediately reached out to our executive board to talk about this, to weigh in on a position. I will tell you that when it comes to the office of sheriff, we have an office, we have a responsibility to maintain the integrity of the office. And, we are in a tough position, and we have to make tough calls. I always say, if we want to make everybody happy, we'd sell ice cream, but that's not the case. and so, we make these decisions that not everybody will like, but coming in from a board perspective, we'd have to be in our own cone not to realize what's happening on a larger scale. We see the news reports like everybody else. And I was one of the first instructors for the new sheriffs. New sheriffs who were elected. By the way, there was 40 new sheriffs elected in the state of Missouri during the last election. They're required to attend a 2-week training session. I was one of the first instructors to teach. And our message from there on out the last 2 weeks was, don't do anything to embarrass your office or yourself. And there's a real reason that we stress that, because, we don't want to be in the news for the wrong thing. We want to be in the news for the right reasons. And so I do think that some of our leadership and fellow sheriffs around the state who are doing the good work that the people elected them to do every single day are probably embarrassed by some of the allegations. Now, I know they haven't gone through the legal process, and Sheriff Montgomery deserves due process and for that to play out through the normal channels, right? But certainly we have some concerns based on some of the information that we're seeing.
So one of the reasons that I think that is such an important question and important issue to address is because now, transitioning into some of the bigger picture stuff and what we've seen around the country, as disappointing and always, aggravating it is to see protests breaking out across the country again. We in the St. Louis area, we know how impactful that can be, obviously from the history that we've gone through. As disappointing as that is, one of the differences, it personally, at least my feeling has been, one of the differences is the national attitude seems to be much more supportive of law enforcement, specifically when we look at these protests that are targeting law enforcement agencies like ICE across the country. It just feels to me personally like we've turned a corner in the last year or so, especially since the election in November, where what I would call some common sense has come back into the national conversation, and there has been more support of police. So you hate to see a story, especially a local story, that would damage any of that momentum. Do you feel that that momentum and that change as well at your level?
There's a lot of shifts. There's a lot of shifts that we're seeing, and there's evidence to support that. I think, in terms of the recruitment, we still have challenges, and we'll have challenges along with other sectors. But I also think that people understand what happens when you defund the police. People understand, and they've learned consequences, what happens when we demoralize the police from doing their job. I think the challenges will persist, as they always do. And it's good that we have leadership from the top on down that has recognized it. And they're a little bit more vocal now, and providing that support and leadership through the ranks down locally has made a difference. And it makes a difference in the state of Missouri. I know I've had conversations with the director of Department of Public Safety and the governor. There are real initiatives, and I mean meaningful decisions and efforts to get back to doing policing, not only in the state of Missouri, but also across the country. And that's important. We're seeing some record low crime as a result of it. Our crime stats are mostly down in the categories in Jefferson County, and I speak with other leaders throughout the region. So I think we're getting back to what we need to do to keep our community safe. And that's a good thing.
Yeah.
Now, I mentioned one more thing.
Yeah.
Because, we do have, it's this weird thing, right? Like we have to get back to policing. We have to give police officers the power and the ability to do their job and keep our communities safe. But I also never want to lose respect for the fact that one of our responsibilities is also to make sure that our police officers are following the Constitution, that they are being held to a higher standard. And that's a responsibility for all of us as well. So it's not, here you go, boys and girls, let's go out there and arrest everybody and do everything that we need to keep our community safe. We have to be held accountable. And that's what, part of this larger discussion with what's going on in St. Louis City needs to be, and that is, we have a responsibility to our communities.
Yeah. Well said. And the last thing I wanted to ask you about, and you just touched on it a little bit there, is recruitment, because we had gotten to a point, I think, in this country, and again, this is my personal opinion, where it started to feel like, it was a shameful, or it's in some areas embarrassing career to want to pursue law enforcement. And that is so disgusting and dangerous and wrong, and just a path that you and I have talked about, that those feelings that we're spreading over the last recent years. But I feel like that's turned around in a big way, and there's some pride and support rightfully coming back to law enforcement across the country. You mentioned that there's still a struggle with recruitment. Is it getting better, or is that still a major issue for law enforcement?
It's a challenge for us, but I think we have a generational issue. I mean, my latest departure of an officer had been here 2 years, going to another department, doesn't feel there's enough opportunities. And, after 2 years, I mean, you're still considered a rookie. You don't, at 2 years, a little bit, but you shouldn't be lead, guiding, directing troop, like right. the police officers out there. I mean, so it's a generation issue, and it's not exclusive to law enforcement. I mean, I talk to employers across many different sectors, and they get kind of the same attitude where, an employee comes on board and they expect that they should be supervising, 5 to 10 people, whatever it is, or they should have some specialized division or unit responsibilities in 2 years. That is a challenge in our profession, just like it is across all these other business opportunities. So while some things are getting better, some of them are generational issues that we're just having to deal with, and law enforcement is not immune to those challenges across the country, right?
That's a whole other conversation that we could have and should have one day down the road.
I know this Tony Colombo guy has been doing the radio, but I'm pretty good myself. Let me run this show. So we're all seeing the same thing.
Not only do I work for a small business, this radio station, is just one radio station, small local business. My family also owns one, so I know exactly what it's like to hire in this generation, and some of those things that you're touching on.
Yeah, some real challenges.
Oh man, Sheriff, before we let you go, it's the dog days of summer out there, but how are things in Jefferson County?
I love them. No complaints. Things are going well for us. We just met with our new crime lab director. We're almost complete on the construction end of it. So excited to bring that opportunity to our community.
Yeah.
As we move forward, let's remind everybody, I know it's that time of year. We have fireworks. They used properly can be a great time. I was speaking with the owner, one of the owners of Fireworks City. Fireworks City, by the way, is the longest, oldest fireworks stand community in our community since 1960 in Jefferson County. By the way.
Wow.
So, little plug for Fireworks City.
Yeah.
Look, if they're handled properly, they're usually safe. But unfortunately, the incidents we see each year somehow involve alcohol. So let's have a good, safe 4th of July. Let's stay away from the alcohol and fireworks. Let's not mix them. And I hope everybody has a great holiday.
Yeah, well said, Sheriff. We'll have to get you back on. I'm glad you brought up that facility that you're building out there, because that is going to be a tremendous resource for our area and across the Midwest.
The entire region would love to have you private tour.
I would love
Tony,
to.
you want to come out?
Yeah, I would love to do that. I'd love to get you back on soon to get a full update on that facility. So, Sheriff Dave Marshak from Jefferson County, really appreciate your time as always, sir. We will talk to you again soon. Thanks for your time.
Have a good day.
Yeah, you bet. Great stuff there from Sheriff Dave Marshak from Jefferson County. We just to wrap that up really quick, just to give you the full update on where we are with the situation with the St. Louis Sheriff, Alfred Montgomery, as Sheriff Barshak and I were discussing a moment ago. There has now been an official action taken by Missouri Attorney General Andrew Bailey to remove the St. Louis Sheriff. So we will keep you up to speed on how that goes every step of the way. The sheriff's reaction to that has been to make an announcement that he does not plan to go anywhere. He said in a press conference late yesterday afternoon, quote, "I will not resign. I was elected by the people of the city of St. Louis to serve as their sheriff, and I intend to honor that commitment." Andrew Bailey had given, and like I mentioned, the AG was on with Tim and Chris yesterday afternoon. I highly recommend you go back out and check out that interview on their podcast if you missed it. The AG had given Sheriff Montgomery a deadline of noon today to take action, or he was going to file for this official action to move forward with an attempt to remove the sheriff. And obviously, the sheriff did not resign before that deadline. So that is where we are with that situation, and we will continue to keep you up to speed on everything happening with that issue moving forward. And we thank again Sheriff Dave Marshak from Jefferson County for his time and insight on that issue and so much more. All right, we're going to be joined by News Talk STL contributor Danny Define in just about 15 minutes from now. Before that, I mentioned a moment ago that J.B. Pritzker, for all of our friends, family, and listeners in Illinois, J.B. Pritzker is in the national news today as he is expected to make a big announcement tomorrow afternoon. There is a new report out with details on what to expect from Governor Pritzker in the coming days. We'll tell you all about it next here on Colombo Company.
Like children often do. He said, "Tell me all your thoughts on God."
St. Louis's new choice for conservative talk. Live and local.
I need to know what's going on in my city.
News Talk STL.
Grasser Electric is the team to call if you have an electrical problem at your home or business, or you have a project coming up at your home or business that will require electrical work, or maybe moving some outlets or installing new electric services or extending electric services at your home or business. Grasser Electric does it all. And I can tell you this from personal experience using and working with the team at Grasser Electric. We discovered Grasser a few years ago when we moved into our new home out in St. Peter's. And it was one of those situations like, the where have you been my whole life kind of thing, because, having somebody that you can trust, that you know and trust with your electrical needs at your home and business is something that is so important. It's like having somebody you can trust with your vehicle maintenance, a mechanic that you can trust. If you're not a mechanic yourself, it's something that's super important like that. If you're not an electrician yourself, then, you need to have somebody that you can trust with all of your home's electrical needs. And that is exactly what Grasser Electric can provide. They specialize in all electrical needs, ranging from large scale commercial projects all the way down to simple home service needs, like replacing a bad light switch. They also offer free quotes for new projects. So if you have an electrical problem or just need a quote for new work, you need to contact Grasser Electric now. Learn more and contact them through the website, grasserelectric.com.
It's JC's Wayback Machine. 3 big hours of great tunes from the 90s, 80s, and 70s. Plus bits and pieces that'll take you back to the best years of your past.
Album cuts, forgotten songs, and lots of little treasures.
Or a hole in your head or a whole new head. JC Corcoran, he's back.
All brought to you by the Weber Automotive Group.
It's JC's Wayback Machine. Every Saturday night, 6 to 9. News Talk STL. Reed's Rockets in Wright City has your fireworks. Try the Max 800 shot for a 30-minute show. Want the ultimate American celebration? Get This Is America with over 100 gigantic color bursts. Family owned and operated, Reed's caters for families with the biggest kid selection. Spend $100 or more and get a kids assortment free. Reed's Rockets, 425 West Service Road North in Wright City. Take I-70 exit 199 and look for the big red and white striped tent. Open through July 10th. ReedsRockets.com.
Reed's Rockets in Wright City has your fireworks. Try the Max 800 shot for a 30-minute show. Want the ultimate American celebration? Get This Is America with over 100 gigantic color bursts. Family owned and operated, Reed's caters to families with the biggest kid selection. Spend $100 or more and get a kids assortment free. Reed's Rockets, 425 West Service Road North in Wright City. Take I-70 exit 199 and look for the big red and white striped tent. Open through July 10th. ReedsRockets.com.
Tim Jones and Chris Arps in the afternoon.
Supreme Court just approved deportations of illegal aliens. Zach Smith of the Heritage Foundation will explain what this means for all the injunction-happy lower court judges.
Tim Jones and Chris Arps. Weekdays at 4 on News Talk STL.
Welcome back to Colombo and Company on 101.9 News Talk STL. Thanks again to Sheriff Dave Barshak from Jefferson County for joining us in that last segment. If you missed it or just want to make sure you never miss anything that happens on the show, make sure you subscribe to our podcast. We put the show on as a podcast right after we get off the air every day, and we put it on basically every podcast platform. So wherever your favorite place to get podcasts is on that platform, just make sure you're subscribed to Colombo and Company, and you won't miss anything that happens on the show. And that goes for all the shows here at News Talk STL. Make sure you are subscribed to our podcasts. I mentioned at the beginning of the show that we're going to get you a full update on what is happening with the Middle East and with Donald Trump and the NATO summit and all of that. We're going to get into those details in a little less than 10 minutes when we get News Talk STL contributor Danny Define on the line. I want to stick with some of the local conversation that, we were just having there about the local sheriff situation with Sheriff Marshak, and so going across the river, J.B. Pritzker, Illinois governor, is in the news today, making headlines. A report from Fox News released just a little bit ago today says that the Democrat Illinois governor is expected to make a big announcement tomorrow afternoon, Thursday afternoon. And according to this report from Fox, that announcement will be that he is going to seek a third 4-year term as governor of Illinois. I know what you were thinking. You were thinking I was going to say that he was going to announce his presidential run. More on that in a minute. However, reading this report today, the billionaire governor, a member of the Pritzker family that owns the Hyatt hotel chain, who has started several of his own venture capital and investment startups, is expected to make his announcement tomorrow afternoon in Chicago before traveling to Springfield, Illinois' capital. Illinois is the 6th most populous state and does not have term limits for statewide officials. However, there has not been a 3-term governor in Illinois in over 3 decades since Jim Thompson won 4 terms in the 70s and 80s. Pritzker has become one of the Democratic Party's most vocal critics of the moves by Donald Trump during the opening months of his second administration in the White House there. Pritzker claims that the nation is, quote, in a constitutional crisis, and that, quote, we have too many people who are ill affected by the policies of the Trump administration. So Pritzker says he has taken steps to, quote, Trump-proof the state of Illinois, saying to reporters earlier this year, quote, you come from my people, you come through me. What a tough guy. So, as I mentioned, you, like me, probably when you heard that J.B. Pritzker is in the news for making a big announcement tomorrow afternoon. We may have thought it was going to have something to do with a possible presidential run. Well, we are not off the hook in that regard at all, because back to this report, it says that Pritzker is seen as a potential contender for the Democrats' 2028 presidential nomination, and that the possible launch of this 2026 gubernatorial reelection campaign is not expected to derail him from potentially running for the White House. So J.B. Pritzker expected to make the announcement tomorrow afternoon that he is officially going to be running for governor again in Illinois, which would be a third term, which, like I mentioned, no term limits in Illinois, so no problem there. But that does not get the country off the hook of the possibility of a J.B. Pritzker presidential campaign. So a lot to keep an eye on there, and obviously we will continue to do so. Speaking of crazy Democratic politicians, I'm going to get you a full update on the mayoral election that went down in New York yesterday. Just a bonkers result, in my opinion, of that Democratic mayoral primary. And as I mentioned, want to get you fully up to speed on what is happening in the Middle East and with NATO and Donald Trump and all of that. So we are going to get into all of that as we get Danny Define, News Talk STL contributor, on the line with us. He joins us next on Colombo Company.
Hey, fellas, have you heard the news? You know what that is back in town.
News, analysis, opinion.
Isn't it wonderful that we're keeping criminals out of our country?
How the mayors in these sanctuary jurisdictions are dealing with it, that's interesting.
Safety is our primary concern.
1019 and 94.1 News Talk STL.
My dentist, Dr. Matt Boscia at New Creation Dental Care, is somebody that you've heard on the show many times over the years. You've heard me tell lots of stories about how great he has been for me and my family, and how they are basically a one-stop shop for all your dental needs. And that continues to be the case. But right now, especially, I think it's important to focus on some of those more advanced procedures that they offer there at New Creation, because this can help so many people that may have felt like they didn't have anywhere to go, or it was cost prohibitive, or it was time prohibitive to address serious issues happening with their dental health. Chipped teeth, missing teeth, poor fitting dentures, all of which can cause a lot of discomfort and pain. And in the past, certainly may have been a massive undertaking. And not that it isn't that anymore, but through Dr. Boscia and his staff there at New Creation Dental Care, you could take advantage of some amazing procedures like the all-on-4 full arch implant procedure, which is full mouth restoration that can give you back your smile in as little as 1 day. Right there in the office with the dentist and the team that you know and trust. No more suffering with damaged or missing teeth or poor fitting dentures. Check out some amazing smile makeovers. Learn all about the all-on-4 procedure and see everything that Dr. Boscia and his team can do for you and your family right now just by going to newcreationdentalcare.com.
Yo, this is Vic. All during the month of June, Vic for Vets is proudly honoring our veterans. Every weekday at 11:05, you'll hear about that day's honoree and their incredible service to our country.
Hi, it's Ken. You want to nominate a veteran? Send their name, service information, and story to me, Ken, at newstalkstl.com.
Brought to you by Best Buy Flooring, Patriot Heating and Cooling, and DG Firearms.
Together, let's celebrate the heroes in our community, Vic for Vets, where honor meets gratitude.
Hungry for the best steak you'll ever have? Head to the heart of Moscow Mills and discover Harry J's, a local landmark and family-owned steakhouse, serving up excellence since '98. From mouth-watering appetizers to decadent desserts, Harry J's has something for everyone. Enjoy our extensive bar selection while soaking in our friendly family atmosphere. Whether dine-in or carry out, your meal is prepared to perfection. Make the drive to 300 Main Street and treat yourself to a taste of Moscow Mills' finest. Harry J's, more than a steakhouse. We're a tradition.
This hour of Colombo and Company brought to you by Gutter Pros. Water goes where we tell it. Call 314-656-7195 or visit them at gutterpros.com.
Welcome back to Colombo and Company on 101.9 94.1 News Talk STL. I am Tony Colombo here in studio with producer Ashlyn, and joining us on the line now is News Talk STL contributor, Colombo and Company regular, the great Danny Define. Danny, as always, appreciate your time, my friend.
Tony, how you doing this afternoon?
I can't complain. Just trying to keep up with everything happening locally and nationally and internationally, and certainly appreciate your help with that today. So, so far we've concentrated on a lot of the local issues this afternoon. I want to shift into some of the national and international issues. First of all, you and I haven't spoke since the weekend, and Donald Trump officially, took military action and got the United States involved at that level in the situation in the Middle East. I know that you are somebody that has been concerned in the past about making, another investment to people around the world and not focusing on things here at home. So I want to first just get your thoughts on what you think of the actions taken by the president over the weekend and where we currently stand with the situation between Israel and Iran.
Yeah, well, certainly a lot has happened since we spoke last Wednesday, and that airstrike that the United States carried out with the bunker buster bombs over the weekend. Tony, if it's ends there, if that was a successful strike of the U.S. military, I think we can all agree that a weaker Iran is good for everybody, right? Good for Americans. So that action in itself, it looks like it was a perfectly executed strike. It took out some of their nuclear sites. And again, if that is the end of it, then, hey, I mark that as a win. Again, we are all safer if there's a weaker Iran out there. Mm-hmm. My concern is, as I've said on your show many a times now, I just don't want the deeper involvement in the Middle East. And that goes for sending billions or even $1 trillion of our tax dollars over there. Boots on the ground, which I'll be honest, I think that's a very slim possibility because and his base will not go for that. If we get troops on the ground in Iran, I mean, that is a lot bigger, more complicated operation than the invasion of Iraq back in 2003. I mean, you're talking about a massive country with massive military. My thing is here, we were talking about the ceasefire. And it was interesting because both sides, both Israel and Iran, were just bombing the crap out of each other before that ceasefire was supposed to go into effect. You talk about really slugging it out until the final whistle there.
It's like the basketball player trying to get it was like the basketball player trying to get the last shot off before the buzzer went off. And even if it like left his hand a little after the buzzer, still going for it. Like they were just going at it until the last moment and maybe even a little bit past the buzzer as well. You're exactly right.
Yeah, it was like a UFC championship fight, right? With 10 seconds left, and these guys are throwing haymakers.
Yeah.
So again, it's a perfectly executed military strike from everything that I've read into.
Hey Danny, you're starting to cut out a little bit. I don't know if you can do something about that, or maybe we should just call you right back real quick and try to reconnect. Do you have a
Tony?
Yeah, I think that might be a little bit better. Let's try it. Go for it. Pick up your thought again because you cut out there at the beginning. Go ahead.
So sorry about that. So as I was saying, I hope it ends there. But as we all know, the ceasefire that was supposed to happen last year, it keeps getting broken. And what I think, and Netanyahu's been very clear on this, Israel's been very clear on this, they will not stop fighting until there's a total regime change in Iran. So unless that is part of this new ceasefire deal, that there will be a regime change, I don't expect the fighing to stop until that happens.
Mm-hmm. And I'm glad to hear you say that. And I totally agree with that as well. I was actually talking about with this, I think it was yesterday with Crane Durham, who is somebody that is supportive of what Donald Trump did over the weekend, and talked about the importance of the United States on the world stage and things like that. And we brought up the folks that are worried about the more isolationist type, and I agree with you completely. I don't know if this labels me as an isolationist, but I don't want, and I don't think Donald Trump does either. I believe him. I take him at his word when he says this. I agree with what we did over the weekend. I think stopping Iran, I think flexing our military might on the world stage also is probably something that the world needed to be reminded of as well. But we don't have the time, the resources, and quite frankly, we need to be focused on things here at home. We don't need to be getting into any nation building or regime change or anything like that. So I think you and I are very much on the same page that this was the right thing to do. And Trump has already threatened that if Iran strikes again, he'll drop another attack on them. And I think that that's the truth. And I'm not, and I don't necessarily condemn that idea either, as long as we avoid what we have seen in the past, specifically in the Middle East, like after the Iraq war, of dedicating years, if not decades, of United States resources to try to rebuild a nation in the Middle East. That's not our job.
Absolutely. And listen, if it is Benjamin Netanyahu and Israel's objective to overthrow the current regime there in Iran, then that's their prerogative. By all means, go for it. We just cannot be dragged into this conflict further while we have all these issues going on here in the States.
Yeah. Now, part of this, what's really funny, and actually this leads right into this idea, Donald Trump has been pushing for the world, and now specifically since this NATO summit is happening in the Netherlands right now, pushing NATO partners to do more and to step up to provide more defense and this protection on the world stage. And he asked for his NATO partners to up their commitment to defense spending to 5% of each country's gross national product, and they all agreed except for Spain, and that's a huge win for Trump. And there's been a bit of a love fest happening, and I want to get your thoughts on that. And I also want to just read this story because it's funny. So NATO Secretary General Mark Rutte has been praising Donald Trump for the last 24 hours about him getting Trump getting the countries to agree to increase the defense spending. And then there was a funny moment today. You have to see it. I was going to play it, but it's more of a visual thing. So I recommend folks go out and check out the video of a Sky News reporter in a press conference today, recalling a moment from earlier in the NATO summit where the NATO Secretary General Mark Rutte called Donald Trump daddy. I
did see that.
Trump was talking about how, sometimes people get out of line and you have to do something about it. And Rutte jumped in and said, that's when daddy has to get involved. Sometimes daddy has to get involved. And that's what Rutte said, referring to Trump as daddy. When this Sky News reporter asked about it in the press conference, Marco Rubio is standing just behind the president's left shoulder, and it's everything he can do to try to hold it together. When this Sky News reporter
it's incredible.
Says, what do you think about Mark Rutte calling you daddy? So this is, to me, Danny, it's very different to see such positive coverage and to see an international organization like NATO heaping praise on Donald Trump. It's not what we're used to. We're used to, condemnation and negative headlines. So, I'll take the praise for once. And really funny, the whole daddy situation. What do you make of this difference? You think Trump has really broken through when it comes to not only his influence on the world stage, but the coverage and the reaction that he's getting?
Yeah, well, I think that what's going on right now at the NATO summit, it's clearly you see Donald Trump, a massive upgrade from Joe Biden. It's not even close, the way that he handles some of these NATO leaders, and he commands respect not only for himself, but the United States. I've been critical the last few weeks, Tony, on the show as we're talking about the Middle East and this escalation and my concern with Donald Trump being kind of dragged by the nose by Benjamin Netanyahu. So I just want to clear the air that Donald Trump, there are still some massive wins in this administration. First and foremost, even before he was sworn in, you felt a cultural shift here in the United States where the wokeness, the DE&I walking on eggshells, that kind of victim mentality culture, that changed almost immediately after Trump was elected. And he is doing some great things here, certainly much better than the Biden administration. Border crossings are near zero since he took office back in January. So I don't want to be like, oh, Mr. Doom and Gloom here. And I was MAGA since day one. I was on board since 2015. And now I'm doing a 180 and totally turning on Donald Trump because I do believe he is doing some good things. I just feel like we could take it now a step further. And again, hopefully in the Middle East, that nuclear strike over the weekend, that's the end of it from our point of view. And now we can look inwards and really start with the mass deportation, start with the infrastructure, cleaning up our inner cities that are looking like third world. So that's all I want to see from Donald Trump. And I'm holding out on that. I am going to give him the benefit of the doubt. I do want to give him that olive branch, but now this is the time where you really have to start enacting that because, Tony, as we all know, the midterms, they're going to be here before you know it.
Yeah.
And if we're going to if Trump's going to carry out these massive deportations like he's been promising since day one, it's not from a political point of view, because you know how CNN and MSNBC, they are going to paint him like the biggest fascist. They're going to call him Hitler and all this stuff if he does these mass deportations. And that is tough in a political year, in an election year. So really the clock is ticking, and I hope Trump and this administration can really start taking care of these domestic issues.
I'm glad you brought up, your feelings there on Trump and your support and what the things that you agree with him on and the disagreements that you have, because that is one of the terrible results of the way that the media has taken this country in recent years. That, in your life, my wife and I only agree on 80% of everything. The 20% of the time you disagree. You're never going to find anybody that you fall in line with 100% of the time. But in this world, this media world, if you only agree with somebody 80% of the time, as soon as you speak up on one of those 20% issues that you don't agree with, suddenly you're labeled as a traitor or somebody who's, changed parties or whatever it may be. And it's just a ridiculous mindset to be in. You could be very supportive of somebody, but also be critical in areas that you don't agree with them in. And if we don't have that honest conversation, then we're never going to make any progress. So I'm glad you identified that, because it's such a important part and something that has hurt, I think, media coverage in recent years.
And Tony, the last thing I'll say about that is, and I urge the listeners to take this approach as well, never put the person in front of the movement. And hey, I am a Trump guy, P1. Like I said, I went to my first rally in 2015 when I was in college. All right. So I've been on this train a long time. However, and Trump's a cult of personality. He's a character. He's hilarious. He can have that effect on people, but let's not lose sight of what MAGA was about from day one. And again, it's the mass deportations. It's finishing the southern border wall. It's cleaning up the inner cities. And if we're not getting that from Donald Trump, then we need to hold him accountable, because it's the movement that should be above the person. I'm just hoping that Donald Trump will be the person that actually delivers on this movement and these promises.
Yeah, I think you're right. And I think it's important to remember, and if people are wondering, because this doesn't seem, this isn't reported enough, I don't think, Donald Trump's gotten so much, news and reaction and protests for his deportation policies. He's nowhere near Barack Obama. He's nowhere near Barack Obama's average of deporting people. He's not the leading deporting president in recent history, and he needs to be. So, I think it's such a great point. Go, Danny, we only got about a minute left. Go ahead. Final thoughts.
No, that's a great point, Tony. I'm so glad you said that, because no matter what, even though his numbers technically are lower than Biden and Obama, the media is already going to call him a Nazi and Mussolini and Hitler and all that. So, Donald, they're never going to like you anyway. So you might as well just rip off the Band-Aid and go towards your base, what they want, because you're never going to win over. I know he likes to be a likable guy, but CNN, MSNBC, the women on The View, they're never going to like you. They're going to call you a fascist no matter what. So you might as well just go with what your base is supporting, and that's the mass deportation.
Yeah.
Just rip the Band-Aid off.
Yeah, it's a crazy stat, but it is the truth. He doesn't even average the nearly the number of deportations that Barack Obama did, and that's an important thing to know, and a focus that should be highlighted moving forward. Danny Define, News Talk STL contributor. Really appreciate your time as always, my friend, and we will talk to you again very soon. Have a great rest of your day.
Thanks, Tony. You too.
Yeah, you bet. All right, we are going to lighten things up a little bit and have a little fun. I still want to get into the situation in New York, so we're definitely going to catch you up and talk about that election. But first, we're going to have a little fun and open up Close's cabinet. We'll talk to Mark Close from KC95 next on Colombo Company.
Count on Connor. Connor Roofing is now a 2-time winner of the National Best of the Best Award for customer satisfaction for roofing, storm damage restoration, siding, gutters, both residential and commercial. Please visit ConnorRoofing.com for an estimate. And remember, you can count on Connor.
Chris Arps here, and after Becky and I leave church on Sunday, we head down the street to Capriotti's to grab a classic meatball sub. And of course, for dessert, I get a giant chocolate chip cookie. I love Capriotti's, and you will too.
On Manchester at McKnight in Rock Hill.
Tim Jones and Chris Arps in the afternoon.
Co-host of Wake Up America on Newsmax, Mark Lauder.
This is not Iraq. This is not talking about boots on the ground and changing a government. We're talking about a few bombs that only we have, and that for most likely we are the only ones that can deliver. And we're not talking about atomic weapons. We're talking about the bunker busters that can actually steal the deal.
Tim Jones and Chris Arps, weekdays at 4 on News Talk STL.
Jamie Allman here for O'Fallon Family Floors. Experience the passion. Oh, yeah. You can go in and see the best variety, the best pricing, the best quality, the best personalized service right there off of Highway K in O'Fallon, or you can have the store come to you. Oh, yeah. Brian and his team take great pride in running a fantastic flooring outlet, and you can get their 5-star ratings right there on Google. Just check it out. It's O'Fallon Family Floors, O'FallonFamilyFloors.com.
SR1 Sundays.
Hi, this is Elizabeth Kaiser. Be sure and check out my show, Straight Lines, this and every Sunday at 8 p.m., right after Stand and Fight, part of SR1 Sundays. Let's meet right here and let's peel back some layers of this crazy world, and you might be surprised at what we find. Straight Lines with Elizabeth Kaiser on SR1 Sundays at 8 p.m., right here on 101.9, 94.1 News Talk STL.
Straight Lines with Elizabeth Kaiser on News Talk STL.
KLGY HD3 Clayton, K270BW Belfast, KNBS Bowling Green. This is News Talk STL at 101.9, 94.1, and always streaming at newstalkstl.com.
News this hour from townhall.com. I'm Jason Walker. President Trump defending the effectiveness of the U.S. military strike on Iran's nuclear facilities. Here's White House correspondent Greg Clugston.
A preliminary American intelligence assessment raises some questions about the level of devastation to Iran's nuclear program, but the president is confident.
It's blown up to kingdom come.
And the White House is citing this statement from the Israel Atomic Energy Commission.
We assess that the American strikes on Iran's nuclear facilities has set back Iran's ability to develop nuclear weapons for many years to come.
However, the president's Joint Chiefs Chairman has said final battle damage assessment will take some time. Greg Clugston, Washington.
NATO leaders have agreed on an increase in defense spending. They are endorsing a commitment to invest 5% of their GDP annually on core defense requirements. Also at townhall.com, energy expert Daniel Turner with Power the Future says thanks to President Trump's robust energy policy, the market saw no surge in oil prices despite Israel's war with Iran.
Prices were steady and they even dropped. And that's because there's an energy policy in place that is bright and optimistic, and OPEC in the Middle East can't change that course anymore.
Turner was interviewed this week on the Salem Radio Network. A group of Dallas area families filing a federal lawsuit seeking to block a new Texas law requiring the 10 Commandments in public school classrooms. Law mandates the commandments be displayed starting September 1st. The suit argues the measure violates the separation of church and state. Opponents say the law infringes on religious freedom, but supporters say it strongly reflects the nation's foundational values. More on these stories, townhall.com.
If you're living with pain, see how Relief Factor can help.
My back got injured very bad. I was off work for about a year. I heard about Relief Factor from my wife. I took it every day, 3 times a day for 3 weeks. Look at her and I said, the pain is gone. And she said, I'm glad it helped. I said, no, you don't understand. It's gone.
Fight pain naturally with Relief Factor. Go to relieffactor.com and get your 3-week quick start today. Only $19.95.
1, 2, 3, 4.
Third day. The original members reunited for the 30th anniversary tour, playing all the hits. With special guest Zach Williams. Tickets available Friday at awakeningfoundation.com. Third day, the 30th anniversary tour. You just call my name. An Awakening Foundation event.
From the Michaels Flooring Outlet Weather Center.
I'm First Alert meteorologist Kristen Cornett with your forecast. A heat advisory continues in effect across the area through Thursday evening. For today, mostly sunny, hot, and humid with a high of 96 and a 20% chance for some isolated afternoon showers and thunderstorms. Those dry out this evening. Will be partly cloudy overnight as we drop to 78. And then for Thursday, sunny skies with a high of 96 and only a 10% chance for a few isolated showers and thunderstorms. That's your First Alert forecast. I'm meteorologist Kristen Cornett.
This hour of News Talk STL brought to you by Onder Law. Call for a free consultation because winning is what we do at Onder Law. Call 314 or 618-9000.
Fox News commentary.
President Trump is right to be frustrated with Israel and Iran, but this is still nowhere near World War III. I'm Tommy Lahren. More next.
I'm alpine skier Michaela Schifrin. I've won the most World Cup ski races in history. But what does success mean to me? Success means discipline. It's teamwork. It's the drive and passion inside of us, and it's why Stifel is one of the fastest growing global wealth management firms in the country. If you're looking for success, surround yourself with the people who will get you there. If you're an advisor or investor, choose Stifel, where success meets success.
Stifel Nicholas and Company Incorporated, member SIPC and NYSE.
Past performance is no indication of future results. Investing involves risk. Consult a financial advisor before making any investment decisions.
Both Israel and Iran initially violated the ceasefire that was agreed upon, and our president is clearly annoyed, as he should be. But for the Democrats to still insist this is World War III, well, that's a bit of a stretch. Iran symbolically attacked our military base in Qatar, gave advance notice it was going to do it to minimize any potential casualties, and the U.S. sustained no casualties. That doesn't feel very World War III-ish, does it? I'm not saying this thing is definitely over, and we can never put faith in Iran, but if a symbolic attack that resulted in 0 U.S. casualties or significant damage is the extent of the retaliation and this ceasefire holds, well, we are in a much better spot than we were a week ago. Yet Democrats hate Trump so much, even when things look good for America and for the free world, well, they'll still root against our president. I'm Tommy Lahren, and you can watch my show, Tommy Lahren is Fearless, at Outkick.com.
Whether at home or at work, you're mobile. So when you're mobile, stay mobile. Keep St. Louis's home for conservative talk with you wherever you go. Download the News Talk STL app in the App Store or at newstalkstl.com.
May the good Lord be with you down every road you roll.
Welcome back to Colombo and Company on 101.9 and 94.1 News Talk STL. 3 o'clock Wednesday afternoon means it is time to open up Closest Cabinet, have a little bit of fun this afternoon. Closest Cabinet brought to you by Weber Chevrolet. Skip Weber unable to join us today, but Mark Close from KC95 is on the line. Marker, great to talk with you, buddy. How are you?
Warm.
Yeah, it's hot.
That's okay.
You know what? I can't believe it's the end. Well, one, I can't believe it's the end of June, period, full stop.
Right.
But I also can't believe it's almost the end of June. And we haven't really talked about the zero turn much at all this year. How is the old girl?
Well, the old girl's a new girl. Remember, I got a new one at the end of last year because the original was going on 10 years, and she gave up the Ghost. So I bought me a new zero turn with a steering wheel, a Cub Cadet. Love it a bunch. Go out and cut grass, enjoy it. It's still one of the high points of the week for me, going out and cutting the grass. And man, up until like a couple weeks ago, it's cutting it like twice a week, man. That stuff, with all the rain we had, it was growing overnight.
Yeah,
overnight.
It was. Yeah, it was a game of trying to find a dry day because there was so much rain, on top of trying to stay, on top of it because it was growing so quickly. It's crazy.
Exactly correct. Yeah.
Well,
So,
it's good. So the new one is it? Yeah. Yeah. Tell me about
it. It's a beaut. It's almost more than I've ever paid for a car before. But I'll tell you what, I like
worth
it a lot,
every penny.
It's my little special place. Nobody, if somebody starts walking at me, I rev the engine and drive right at them. No one messes with me. It's just, it's my me time.
Mm-hmm.
I wear earplugs because it's loud, but no music, no nothing. Just driving around and enjoying myself.
So we started the segment there with a little Rod Stewart, and he's been in the news recently. I know he had a couple of bouts with the flu in recent weeks.
Yeah.
He's also made some news. He's made a couple political statements here recently, and some other things. All things that are not music related, which always super frustrates me. He's in the news, and so is AC/DC. Some of these older guys are kind of getting some. I'll talk about AC/DC in a second because some of these older bands are starting to get pick up some criticism here. But I didn't know if you had any Rod Stewart thoughts or stories or anything to share about Rod Stewart before we move on.
Well, he'll be coming to town out at Hollywood with Cheap Trick opening for him. Rod is 78. 79, I think he got a Lifetime Achievement Award at this last Grammys. And he just, he's kind of been able to do it his way. He did all those American songbook albums that sold extremely well.
Mm-hmm.
He's been a rocker with Faces. He's done ballads. He got criticism. Remember, Do You Think I'm Sexy? He caught all kinds of hell for that.
Right. He's 80.
But
he's 80 years old. Yep.
Okay, I knew it's up there.
He's
a survivor.
He's crossed the milestone.
Going at it. Yeah, and and I guess you got to look at that when you're 80 years old, and if you want to make a political statement, like it's what I guess in the bag was like, I don't think it's not going to hurt my record sales. It's not going to hurt my concerts. It's like say what I want, and move on. And it's a free country. You can say what you want, and and then, if there's somebody out there that doesn't agree with you and wants to not buy your concert tickets, I'm sure he realizes that.
You mentioned that Great American. You mentioned his going into the Great American Songbook and doing the Sinatra type thing, and that was
sure.
That was something that he kind of focused on exclusively for several years and got away from like the rock stuff. To your knowledge, and I'm not saying you're the Rod Stewart expert, but you would have a better chance of knowing than me. Is that something he still incorporates in the show? Is it like, you'll go from Fly Me to the Moon to Hot Legs, or something like that? Like, what do you know how that, does he try to still do that? Or is it like when you go to the show, it's either one or the other?
Yeah, I think it's one or the other. I mean, the stuff he's out doing now, he's touring with, and it's going to be Maggie May and Reason to Believe and Hot Legs and Do You Think I'm Sexy and all that. Yeah, I don't think he hits on the Americana stuff or whatever you want to call it, the show tunes or just. Yeah, I don't think he does it. Maybe he throws in an odd one every now and then, but it's pretty much a rock show for the most part.
So I know you spend a whole lot of time on TikTok. So maybe Maybe you've seen this, maybe you haven't. But there is some recent footage from an AC/DC show that has gone viral, just live fan footage that, just kind of picked up steam of a recent AC/DC show, which I didn't even realize they were back on stage because I knew Brian Johnson was going through like ear issues, and they've had a lot of, they've had a lot of their own problems here recently. So I didn't even realize that they were back touring or performing at any high level. But this footage has Brian Johnson not sounding great. It's more that he just he's quiet, like he just can't sing loud anymore. It's not necessarily that he's off key. It's just he's just like quiet because he just doesn't seem to have that power in his voice anymore. And Angus Young is looking his age. So so there's been this big movement all of a sudden from the younger generation, probably mostly because it's on, TikTok and these other social media platforms. But a lot of people are saying that they are, damaging their reputation by staying out and performing if they can't deliver what they, what they had in the past. What do you think about that idea in general? Like, if nobody's going to be able to do, perform at the level musically or anything else, the same when you're in your 70s as when you're in your maybe, 30s. But I don't know. I'd still love to see AC/DC live. I don't want it to be terrible, but what is just your general thoughts on that? People are calling AC/DC out saying, hey, look, you look old. You don't sound as good as you used to. Maybe hang it up.
You know what? A whole bunch of people I know went and saw them in Nashville. They're doing the U.S., but they're only doing like 14 cities. St. Louis wasn't one of them. So a whole bunch of people from St. Louis went and saw them in Nashville. And they loved it. And there's one where Angus Young, he still wears the goofy little shorts and socks and shoes, the little schoolboy thing. He's got a big old shocking white head of hair.
White. He is white hair. Yes.
But there's one show where they show him where he's going through a solo and he gets on the ground and playing guitar and starts like spinning around like a Three Stooges thing, with his legs kicking. He's moving, brother. It wore me out just watching him. And the guitar riffs were there. As far as Brian, with the hearing and everything, he was able to overcome that. And the videos that I saw some clips, and again, you got to be able to wail if you're playing AC/DC. This is not, these aren't ballads by any stretch. You got to be able to scream it. And the videos that I saw and heard sounded pretty good. So maybe he was having an off night. When you're in your 70s or creeping on 80, you're doing off night every now and then, So
yeah.
So I get the legacy thing too, because I've seen everybody, and I've seen I saw McCartney, 1976, the first time he played the United States after the Beatles, and I saw him in Kansas City. It was the most amazing show I've ever seen. I've seen him a couple of other times, and he's got his on and off nights. He did, if you remember, the 50th anniversary show for Saturday Night Live. He closed that live show, and it was not good. It was not good. The only thing that might have been worse was Paul Simon, who opened the show, and that was really bad. But then Paul Simon was here about a month ago, played 2 nights at Steeple, and I talked to people who saw him, and they said for the most part, he was pretty good.
Yeah,
he was pretty good. There was a couple of, nobody hits the high notes. Elton John, Billy Joel, all sing an octave lower than they used to.
Right.
You got to. You have to.
And by the way, they had plenty of bad nights in their prime too.
Oh,
you know what I mean? Everybody had days where they were sick or not feeling well or just didn't have it, whatever it may be. So you can find bad performances even from, bands in their prime. Yeah.
Guaranteed.
Sure.
And they're human. They travel. They get, maybe they got starting to get the flu, but they're in the city. They sold out. The last thing they want to do is disappoint all those people, because then they got to reschedule. These people got to try and get a different date and all that. So they'll go out not feeling the best they've been. And most of them are troopers and still go through and put a pretty good show on. So
Talking to Mark Close with KC95, closest cabinet here on Colombo and Company, brought to you by Weber Chevrolet. Hopefully, Skip Weber back with us next week. I thought this was a very entertaining report. I don't know. I don't know. It's one of those reports that there's just no way to know how accurate this is, but it's still worth the conversation. A recent survey was done where this organization asked Americans what their most trusted brands were. Most trusted brands. And this is across the board, from restaurants to grocery stores, household products, entertainment channels, internet channel. I mean, like, just any brand, doesn't matter what, just favorite or most trusted brand in the United States. For Gen Z, the super young kids right now, the most trusted brand is YouTube.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
For boomers, this is how wild and just wide open this is. For boomers, the most trusted brand is Kleenex.
I've never been let down blowing my nose with a Kleenex.
No, right? Yeah. Kleenex makes more sense to me than YouTube.
Yeah, YouTube.
Gen X, my generation, most trusted brand is Dawn dish soap.
Man.
And for millennials, and this is funny, for millennials, their most trusted brand is Google, which is interesting to me that Gen Z and millennials, their brands are both digital, online, internet brands. And for Gen X and boomers, our most trusted is like, an actual physical product that plays a role in our life, which I think that says something there. That's hilarious.
How important the online thing has become, like you said, has become to the younger generation. And I thought they'd say something like Apple, for their phone or something.
Yeah, that's a good point. I'm surprised. I'm looking at some of the other results, and I don't see Apple, which that's surprising. So here's Gen Z's list. Their most trusted brand, again, this is Gen Z. Most trusted brand is YouTube, followed by Band-Aid, Dawn dish soap, scoring high points, Costco, and Google. For millennials, it's Google, PayPal, YouTube, wow, and the post office, USP.
The post office.
What?
Holy
yeah,
cow.
And that's millennials.
Woo.
Gen X, like I said, is Gen X, like I said, is Dawn dish soap, followed by Oral-B, Hershey's, Band-Aid, there's Band-Aid again, and Duracell. And boomers, you can tell us if this is true or not. Most trusted brand is Kleenex, followed by Dawn dish soap. Again, one of the highest scorers across the board. UPS and Tylenol.
Tylenol. Yeah, well, I guess, you go to it to get pain relief and it works for you and stuff. Yeah, if someone were to come to me and say, what's your most trusted, I would, mine would be like Diet Coke. Because I know when I get a Diet Coke, I know what it's going to be.
You know exactly what it's going to be.
You know what it is. There's no, and if you go and get it out of a fountain, it might be a little bit of a different
That's
mix.
a good one.
But if you get it, that is the good stuff. But if you get it out of a bottle, it's like, hey, I know when I buy this, I know what I'm going to be drinking. I know what the taste is. It's consistent, and they're there for you and stuff. So yeah, it's everybody's. That's some of those are Dawn dish soap.
Yeah,
really surprising.
It said that it considered, and there's more details of it I'm not going to get into, but it said that that there were literally thousands of different brands that were mentioned in the survey. But it's funny to see Dawn dish soap and Band-Aid, keep coming up in different places across the board. Here's one more survey, kind of in the same area that I thought was interesting. This is this is the top skills that if you were born before 1990, these skills were probably a big part of your life, but if you were born after 1990, you probably never had to deal with this in your ever and would never have to develop this skill. You'll understand what I'm saying here in a second. So, for example, the number one skill is programming a VCR. If you were born before 1990, the folks that knew how to program a VCR, that was considered to be a major skill. And not only that, it says programming VCR, and then number two is also VCR related, setting up two VCRs so you could make a copy of a movie.
Oh yeah.
So yeah, that was next level skill set that people will never, a thing that will never be, needed or a part of anyone's life ever again. In fact, I think it was just a few years ago. I remember doing the story, and it was since this radio station's been on the air, so it's been in the last 4 years, that the last VCR manufacturer went out of business. So
yeah,
they no longer even make VCRs anywhere.
Wow. Yeah. Well, I mean, and it was funny because I remember down on Manchester, there was a VCR repair shop. And I'm thinking, ooh, they're probably not doing too well at this point. So yeah. Yep. Times change.
Here's a couple more skills from if you were born before 1990, these were very valuable skills or things to know how to do. Rewinding cassettes with a pencil. People won't even like cassettes are not even a thing anymore, let alone a trick like that.
But yeah, put it in there and twisting it using your finger. Yeah.
Driving a stick shift vehicle.
There has been about once every 2 months, there's stories about somebody that tries to hijack somebody's car, and they get in, they don't realize it's a stick, and they go like 10 feet, keep killing it, and got to get out and run away because they can't drive a stick.
My first car ever was a stick, and I actually love it. I would love to have another stick shift vehicle, but you can't even. I think they barely even make them anymore. Most brands don't even have them.
Even on sports cars, you got to special order it.
Yeah,
I mean, somebody like Porsches and BMWs and Lamborghini all come with automatics. It's like, I was, I did driver's ed and learned how to work on a 4-speed. It was my first car too. So yeah.
Here's a couple more quick ones here. Using a Thomas Guide map book to find a street or location. I had buddies that were delivered for DHS or something like that, that had these big map books underneath the front seat of their vehicle, that they could just pull out, and they could, like, if we were ever wondering where something was or needed directions of something, they were like, oh, I'm the man. I can save the day here. And they pull out this huge map book from underneath their driver's seat, and sure enough, all the information right there, which was a big deal because nobody had GPS or anything like that.
And that being said, GPS is voodoo. How the hell does GPS work? I mean,
we talked about that last week.
So I'm telling you, man, it's just you to your phone, and then it goes turn right 50 feet, turn left. No, you moron, you missed it. Turn around and go back. I'm like, how do it know? It's amazing. And thank God I've got it because I'm terrible with directions.
Right.
But it's just the craziest thing I've ever seen. And then there's an accident and they figured that out. So go around that. I am in awe of GPS.
Yeah. So I do know how it works with the satellites. However, I will say that I agree with you completely on how accurate it is. Like, it knows, by, like you said, 50 feet, it knows exactly pinpoint where you are, which is crazy. Last one on this list that I was going to bring up is writing a check, which is also now nearly obsolete. Although it wasn't that long ago that I remember writing a check for something, paying something not that long ago.
I do it.
Yeah.
You go.
I don't think that's completely gone.
Go to a grocery store and write them a check, and if the cashier's under 35, they break out in a cold sweat. They're like, what the hell is this? Yeah, it
You
freaks
can't.
them out. So.
You can't do this. You're not gonna
Pay with
fool me.
paper?
I'm not taking
Come
this
on.
weird piece of paper and acting like you just paid for something. Get out of here with that. Yeah, I don't even know if places even would a grocery store even accept a check anymore? I don't
Some
even know.
of them do. Yeah, but they had to bring over a manager and run it through and do it. But and then if there's somebody in front of you, then there's 5 people in line, first person up there, and gets ready to buy groceries and starts writing a check. The other 4 people behind him, you can hear him go, "Oh God," because it's going to slow down the transaction.
Oh, my dad passed 6-7 years ago now, and he until he died, he was a check writer, even at the grocery store. And even then, 7-8 years ago, it was like if when he pulled out the checkbook, everybody went, "Oh, here we go."
Oh God, no.
Yeah. So it's definitely even that was 8 years ago. It's gotten much worse since then. Marker, great stuff as always. Before we let you go, what is the latest happenings at KC and of course the band? You guys playing out anywhere? If so, I hope you got fans. I mean, I hope you have fans that are watching, but also fans that are keeping you cool.
Yes. Well, we're going to play Saturday night at a place called Pete's Hard Stop in Smithton, Illinois, which is right near Belleville. They're celebrating their 3rd anniversary. I'm looking ahead to the weather, and they're saying now maybe low 90s, 91, 92. We're playing at night, 7 to 10. They got a real nice outdoor area. If the weather's right, we will set up outdoors. If it's too warm, we'll be indoors. But we'll do that, and that is gig number 8 for the month of June, and then we got the next couple of weeks off, and it's going to be a beautiful thing. But Pete's Hard Stop in Smithton this Saturday from 7 to 10, and they got all kinds of specials. They're doing some free hors d'oeuvres stuff because it's their 3rd anniversary. So we'll be hitting the east side.
I have some very close friends that are from Smithton, so I am familiar with that area. And hopefully you'll have a great time in beautiful Smithton, Illinois. And we sure did go from cold and rainy to blistering hot. there was no in between for these outdoor shows or anything like that.
I know they're going to be delivering my electric bill in a Brinks armored car. It's going to be just over the moon, brother. But hey, you can't sit and sweat it out that much. So
no kidding.
Hopefully it was supposed to start calming down beginning of next week. So hopefully that works.
Well, great stuff as always, buddy. Closest Cabinet brought to you by Weber Chevrolet. Mark Close from KC95. We'll talk to you again soon, my friend. Have a great rest of your day.
All right, brother. Take care.
You bet. And quick reminder that Closest Cabinet is brought to you by Weber Chevrolet. Skip Weber unable to join us this week, but of course, if you are looking for a new vehicle, nobody is going to take care of you in that vehicle better for the entire time that you own it than the team at Weber Chevrolet. 3 locations around town to serve you: Creve Coeur in Missouri, Granite City, and Columbia in Illinois. Also, don't forget about Weber Ford in Granite City. The entire Weber Automotive Group is there for you. Their focus is on customer service. That's why they have been in the St. Louis area for nearly 125 years. So I can speak to that personally when I say nobody's going to take care of you in that vehicle better than the entire time that you own it, better than the team at Weber Chevrolet. And of course, nobody's going to give you a better price. Nobody's going to give you more on your trade-in. So if you're looking for a new vehicle, check out what's happening at all 3 Weber dealerships at WeberChevrolet.com. All right. I want to talk a little bit about, get back into the news, talk a little bit about this wacky mayoral election in New York that went down last night. We will get into that, and we'll get you ready for the Tim Jones and Chris Arp show to take you through the rest of this hot and busy Wednesday afternoon on 101.9 and 94.1 News Talk STL.
If you have a phone, you have a radio. Download the all-new News Talk STL app.
Love the all-new News Talk STL app.
And listen anytime, anywhere.
John Beal Roofing reminds you we are in the stormy season, And that means if you have even the smallest leak in your roof, you could soon have a much bigger issue. Call the John Bill to make sure that your biggest investment is protected. That call can save you major dollars. If you do get hit during a storm, John Bill has a rapid response team. Call 1-800-NEW-ROOF. 1-800-NEW-ROOF. 1-800-NEW-ROOF, John Bill.
This is Larry Connor's commentary on News Talk STL.
There is an illness in our nation that breeds, multiplies, infects all around us. Sometimes easy to see, other times it hides, but it remains alive. The survey right after our bombing of the Iranian nuke facilities is a perfect example. The survey taken within 2 days of those strikes found that Americans disapprove of the strikes, 56% to 44%. You make political divisions, 88% of Democrats didn't like it. 82% of Republicans did, but less than half strongly supported it. All these numbers are reflecting this insidious disease, this epidemic in our nation. Is not just being against what Trump did, it is that many critics were hoping anything he did, these missions, would fail. Such critics are not debating, was this a good idea or a bad idea? These critics simply wanted it to fail. To fail. That is a poison, which is bitter to swallow, but true.
Get more Larry Connors on Larry Connors USA.
Tonight at 6 on News Talk STL.
Hey, if you're 50 or older, you do not want to take any risk with your money. In fact, you want Leslie Consulting. My friend Bob Leslie can show you a gain and retain plan. Means that you never lose. Plus, you get up to a 20% bonus on day one. Leslie Consulting, a leader in brokerage and risk management. 314-721-0066. LeslieConsulting.com.
I'm Dr. TJ, owner of the Institute of Natural Health, co-owner of Optimal Nutraceuticals, and the host of Wellness One. Wellness One is designed to cut through the nonsense and provide you common sense science-based information regarding health and wellness. On the show, we discuss topics like thyroid health, gut health, hormone optimization, and many others. Our show airs Saturdays at 10 a.m. and 2 p.m. and Sundays at 11 a.m. and 3 p.m. right here on Newstalk STL. And you can visit us at inhstl.com. That's inhstl.com.
Here's great news. Napoli Kirkwood is now open. So that means fine dining right in the heart of Kirkwood. So you have the original Cafe Napoli in downtown Clayton, Napoli 2, Town and Country, Napoli 3 on the streets of St. Charles, right next door to Napoli C, plus Napoli Brothers Pasta and Pizza in the Chesterfield Valley. All of those locations, and now adding Napoli Kirkwood. What a great place to dine. Napoli Kirkwood, now open.
Hey, Jamie Allman here for the great Window World. You know, just over the last 20 years of Window World being in St. Louis, they've improved the look and thermal efficiency of more than 76,000 customers in St. Louis. Plus, Window World windows come with a lifetime warranty that covers all parts, glass breakage, and labor. And now Window World is now offering 36 months, same as cash financing with approved credit. Call them today at 314-993-1800, 314-993-1800.
On the next
Larry Connors USA.
Trump continues to pull off amazing maneuvers that some doubt would ever happen. But will they last?
Larry Connors USA. Now weeknights 6 until 8 on News Talk STL.
Welcome back to Colombo and Company on 101.9 News Talk STL. Thanks again to Mark Close from KC95 joining us in that last segment, Close's Cabinet. Also in the 2 o'clock hour, we talked to the sheriff of Jefferson County, Sheriff Dave Marshak. Great insight on what's happening with the local news about St. Louis Sheriff Alfred Montgomery, and also just talking about law enforcement issues across the country Great stuff with Dave Marshak. Also, Danny Define, News Talk STL contributor Danny Define. Join us in that 2 o'clock hour. Another reminder that best way to make sure that you never miss anything that happens here on the show is by subscribing to our podcast. We put the show out as podcast right after we get off the air every day on basically every podcast platform. So wherever you get podcasts, make sure you're subscribed to Colombo Company. Won't miss anything that happens here on the show. Also, another quick reminder, we're almost at the end of June. June has been the month for Vic for Vets. Vic Porcelli and Ken Williams have been honoring a veteran every day in the month of June, and there's still a few more days, obviously, for that to happen and for you to submit a veteran in your life to be honored. But Vic for Vets does not end in June. It will continue on, and every week, Vic and Ken will continue to honor veterans submitted by listeners. And, it's a great way to honor local veterans. So just because we're almost at the end of June does not mean it is too late for you to submit the vet in your family or a friend of yours to be honored as part of Vic for Vets. It's all brought to you by DG Firearms in Bowling Green, Patriot HVAC, Best Buy Flooring. And all you got to do is go to our website, newstalkstl.com. You'll get all the details, how to submit the information to Vic and Ken to get the vet in your life honored. Vic for Vets does not end in June. It continues on, permanently here on News Talk STL and through the Vic Porcelli Show. All right. I mentioned a little bit ago about the New York mayoral election. This is something that we discussed yesterday in our conversations with Crane Durham and Susie Moore. And I falsely was sort of made up my mind that Andrew Cuomo, the former governor, was going to win this mayoral Democratic primary in New York. He had been leading in the polls most of the way through. Now, the polls had gotten a lot tighter in recent weeks and days, so this isn't a complete surprise because it was being reported as a possibility. I just am shocked that in the end that it went this way. Political earthquake that rocked the nation's most populous city may end up proving to be a gift for Republicans aiming to paint Democrats as extreme radicals ahead of next year's midterm elections, something that Danny Define touched on a little bit earlier on. Those midterm elections are going to be here before you know it, which is crazy to think about, but is the truth. Democratic Socialist Zoran Mamdani, 33-year-old state assembly member from Queens, who is originally from Uganda and identifies as a Democratic Socialist with a extreme left-wing woke progressive platform, won the New York Democratic mayoral primary, setting him up to be the likely next mayor of New York City, which is wild. This was supposed to be Andrew Cuomo's, and it was being reported by various organizations in the mainstream media as, the triumphant comeback of Andrew Cuomo, despite all of the disgusting, questionable history that he still has. But the current mayor, Eric Adams, is still in this race as well, because he is now running as an independent. So it's not a done deal, but it is a big deal that Mamdani won the Democratic primary for mayor yesterday. Last I checked, it was 45% for him, 36% for Andrew Cuomo, and the rest, it was sprinkled around through a few others with well over 90% of the votes in. So not the final numbers, but we'll have those soon. And just to give you an idea of this person that New Yorkers voted for yesterday, he identifies as a Democratic Socialist, as I mentioned. His campaign focused on issues like rent freezes, universal child care, making public transit free, investing in green infrastructure, and introducing policies that address economic inequality and promote social justice. He's been an active part, like participated in anti-Israel, pro-Palestine protests in places like the campus of Columbia University. And he has a plan for a state-run grocery stores in New York City. So the government would be in charge of the food supply in the grocery stores in New York if this candidate gets all he wants. Just an amazing development in New York City, and one that is making national headlines and will continue to do so, and continue to be one of the many stories that we keep a very, very close eye on. All right, that's going to do it for us. Colombo Company back tomorrow at 2. In the meantime, keep it here for the O'Reilly Report next, followed by the Tim Jones and Chris Arp Show. Thank you so much for listening to us here at 101.9 and 94.1 News Talk STL.
Follow me to Esquire Sports Medicine, where they've got your back. Esquire is the oldest sports medicine clinic in St. Louis. Dr. Draghi and his team of chiropractors can get you back to work, back to life without the pain. New patients usually scheduled within 24 hours. 314-644-0885. 644-0885. EsquireSportsMedicine.com.
Hungry for the best steak you'll ever have? Head to the heart of Moscow Mills and discover Harry J's, a local landmark and family-owned steakhouse, serving up excellence since '98. From mouth-watering appetizers to decadent desserts, Harry J's has something for everyone. Enjoy our extensive bar selection while soaking in our friendly family atmosphere. Whether